The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, part 3 of the wide receiver player profiles. You missed part 2? Shame on you. It came out yesterday. Hit the description of this podcast or video, however, to find all of the wide receiver shows, all of the running back shows, and I'll add in the QB and tight end shows once we get to those player profiles as well. Next week, if you're watching this in real time, I will be releasing my top 200 fantasy football rankings for the 2020 season. 2 very special guests shall be joining me for that show. So I suggest you keep up the tab. Turn on the notifications, all right? Or just subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. You want to be a mention, really help out the show? Just tap 5 stars. You don't need to leave a review or anything. Just hit that 5-star button. Boom, we're good to go. Also, smash the like button to the episode and tell me who your favorite wide receiver sleeper is in the 2020 draft. We'll get to it. Chris Meaney is in studio. Previously on the show, you were unemployed.
Yes.
You are no longer unemployed.
I was looking unemployed.
You were looking unemployed. You cleaned yourself up now that you're employed again.
Yes.
I'll break the news right now if
All right.
people haven't seen it. From FadeTheNoise.com.
Yes.
Chris Meaney, congratulations, my man.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, pretty excited. FTN of a lot of big names, a lot of exciting people, very smart, intelligent people. I'm just thrilled to join the team, and I'm looking forward to a lot of good stuff that we're going to put out.
Go check out FadeTheNoise.com. Also joining me on the line from Chris's former employer who fired him, TheAthletic.com. It's Jake Ciely. What's going on, man?
Oh, what's up? I guess this is a fitting day. Chris doesn't even tell me that he has this comment. I'm checking my phone right now. I don't have a message from him, but, I got a message from another girl declining me after dating for a month. So it's just a terrific day for me. I'm getting turned down all over the place.
Oh, dating for a month. I mean, you got in there. Got to get to the boneyard quicker there, Jake.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, you got to show the goods.
Zoom dates,
rolling.
man. Zoom
Yeah,
dates.
Zoom dates seem like they're a bit tough. All right.
I didn't say Zoom dates. They weren't Zoom dates.
Real dates.
I
But
think
I'm
you
more
should
upset
have
with
some
Chris
Zoom
anyway.
dates, though.
Are you having your mask dates?
Your real life end dates, yes.
All right, let's jump back into the receivers. I'm taking these ADPs from the NFBC, and I've sorted them by the last 14 days. We covered Deebo Samuel towards the end of part 2. I actually cut it out. I started talking about it, then I interjected myself, being like, well, he broke his foot.
Yeah.
So we'll get to Deebo here in a second and the rest of the 49ers. But I want to start with where we left off last time. The Washington football team's best player, I would think, at the moment, unless Dwayne Haskins really wants to take a leap forward, Terry McLaurin. Some people have awful nicknames for him, but not us. Scoring McLaurin's where it's at. He's number 24 in the overall wide receiver ADP at the moment. That's pick number 57 overall. Seems like a steal to me, Jake.
Yeah, so one of mine, to go back to, as you said, the place that let Chris go. Back in May, I had my next breakout wide receiver, and there was 2. I was the only position I did 2 with, just because wide receiver's insane. But it was Hollywood Brown and Terry McLaurin. And, you look at the beginning of last year, started great with Case Keenum over the first 5 games. A little bit of decline as Case started to decline, and then Dwayne came in, and we all know that he was rough. But Dwayne Haskins showed signs. You said they take a step forward this year. I do expect Haskins to take a step forward last season in the draft. Everybody talking about what they're calling Joe Burrow this year is what they were saying about Dwayne Haskins last year. He's throwing for 50 touchdowns. He turned the OSU offense around. It was like everybody was going gaga over this guy. And just like Lamar Jackson, his rookie season, he has some struggles and everybody's like ready to write him off. I think Dwayne Haskins take a step forward, and Terry McLaurin is in line for an enormous amount of targets. Those last 3 games started to perform well again as a top 20 wide receiver. And you take those first 5 and those last 3, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you would have wide receiver 3 overall, 1, 2, 3 overall numbers in just those 8 games. I would never extrapolate those, but it shows the potential he has.
McLaurin scored 6 touchdowns in 8 games when he received 7 or more targets in that game. So that's good. Washington also played behind on 69.3% of their offensive snaps last year. Nice. Yeah. I would like that number to be even higher for my guy McLaurin here. I guess my question to you, because we all seem to be in on him, everyone's in on him.
Yeah.
It's not just the 3 of us. It's everyone across the board is in. But he's still only going at pick 57, as high as number 45. I think I would be willing to take him higher than that. But is he the guy who's just going to get so much steam by the time the drafts come around that maybe it's like a third round ADP all of a sudden. He's going to pick like 35. And then you're baking in all the upside with it. It still might be worth it.
Yeah.
But right now he's a steal.
He is a steal right now. And, Jake was talking earlier about, a few weeks ago when we chatted up this Washington offense and McLaurin. I mean, we did a mock draft, and I was able to take him in the 6th round as my 3rd wide receiver. And I just don't think that that's possible. You hear this question all the time, like, who's the guy that you want in drafts? And sometimes, if you pick McLaurin, you tend to reach on those guys that you want. Like,
I'm good with that, though.
But
I am pro reaching on guys that you like. Because people always say, well, you didn't get good value. It doesn't fucking matter if you get good value or not. If the guy is good, he's going to be worth the pick that you took him at. If
Sure.
he's not, you're going to lose.
And you're never going to have to, for where he's going and as high as he can go, I feel like you're never going to have to really reach for him as a guy who's going in the 3rd round. I think you could still get him after 3 rounds and feel pretty good about him being your wide receiver 2. And if he's your wide receiver 3, even better, because he does have that upside. Washington's still going to be a bad football team. They're going to be playing from behind. Jake mentions the last few games. I mean, you look at the last 3 in particular, almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, one against the Packers, who, were preparing at that time for, it was a must-win game. And Haskins played pretty good at Lambeau. I remember that game. And I mean, 100 targets, that's very doable for McLaurin, and there's still not a lot of competition there.
Well, that's the whole thing. So, Jake, what are we looking at for competition in this Washington passing game? Like, is the number 2 Steve Sims Jr.?
It could be Steve Sims. I think people are forgetting about Kelvin Harmon. Kelvin Harmon kind of gives him a bigger presence outside. They also drafted Antonio Gandy-Golden, which I don't think is going to contribute immediately as a rookie. I would expect him more as year 2 or 3. He's come from Liberty University. I went there for a year and a half. Small school, so it's not like he was facing top-end competition, despite the fact he dominated there. So you're right now, the way that Sims played, he looked great towards the end of the year, especially, but I don't know that Sims is necessarily the answer as their number 2. Point being, between Sims, between Harmon, between Gandy-Golden, heck, Antonio Gibson out of the backfield, when he's going to get used potentially like a Christian McCaffrey and line up on the line of scrimmage, there's no competition for the number 1 job. It's just who's going to fill in the number 2. And as we've seen from other teams, they just might be a collection. It just might be game to game to game. It's going to be depending on the matchup, depending on who steps up that week, but it's going to be Terry every single week as the number 1, unless Antonio Brown happens. But even if that happens, like the rumors were out there, which, the team's already come back and said, no, that's not happening. But even if it did, he's not playing for 6 to 8 games anyway.
Right, yeah. And the one thing about these rookie wide receivers and you go into your 2nd year is sometimes these wideouts who are good down the stretch in year 1, they get into year 2 and they have to, adjust and they face top coverage. I mean, he faced it all last year and he passed in flying colors.
Yeah, we hope that he doesn't suffer from Michael Clayton syndrome.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
I recall drafting him in year 2. Not a success.
Yeah, not good.
But, Jake, let's say that 45 is his top end right now over the last 2 weeks in picks. So let's say 48. Is where I'll say 45 is where he ends up. So late 3rd, early 4th round pick, depending on like the scale of where he goes. Would he be worth it there? I say yes. And the way that Chris kind of described it, if you can get McLaurin as your 2 or your 3, you're dancing. What if McLaurin was your 1? And that's the way that you went at your draft.
Yeah, I don't think you can make McLaurin at your 1. Look, a lot of people push back when we start talking about first rounders because I always say don't buy a player at peak value. Like, don't buy all of the risk. And at some point, we're going to be buying McLaurin at all the risk. Round 1 and 2, those guys don't count. You can't actually put in that much buffer for those guys to not buy all the risk. Like when I say that, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is worthy of an early 2nd round pick. Okay, that's buying all the risk, but at the same time, he's also got a very little tiny room to hit top 5. So I say all that to be saying is Terry McLaurin at some point as your wide receiver 1 is going to be too much. He's terrific. I have him inside the top 20, but I'm looking right now. He's in the 40s for me. 40 seems like a good spot. You start jumping into the top 40 and top 35, and now you're bumping out Adam Thielen and A.J. Brown and Robert Woods and Odell Beckham. I mean, you can make a case for him, and now you're talking top 15 wide receivers. I mean, where's the room for him to grow? Now he has to have that season. Otherwise, like I said, you're just buying all the risk. And I understand, again, first 2 rounds, it's hard not to do, but you don't need to push Terry into those 2. Find Robert Woods, go for somebody else.
I'm not even really talking about that. I'm saying, let's say you start your draft. I don't know.
You could go back tight end,
back tight end, back McLaurin. Like if that was your team and he's your 1, but the rest of your team is just
what are your
so
tight ends
strong.
Would be Kelsey
or Kittle, yeah.
Point.
I think he can still be your 2. And if he's going to be your 1, I mean, again, we're talking about the 40s. To say what you're saying, those are the first 3 rounds. So you chop off 36. All right. Well, 37 is Woods for me. Beckham, Parker, Keenan Allen. These are my rankings, obviously. Chark, we haven't talked about yet, but Cooper, Lockett, Cup, McLaurin, DJ Moore, all those things. You doesn't need to be your 1. You can get one of those and probably still have him as your 2. And if he is if he's going to be your 1, if somebody's going to take him there, then let somebody else take him there.
I'd be fine, I think, if I did the start, like running back, tight end, running back, tight end, running back. Like if that was the way that it broke down, I would want to shoot for as much upside as possible
in this
range.
Sure.
I think objectively, Robert Woods probably has a better year, but I think that the ceiling for McLaurin is way higher. That I might start risking at that point, and then I probably have to go receiver, and then try to hit.
McLaurin's higher than Brown and Beckham and Parker?
Parker, yes.
Yeah.
Parker. Why is everybody just dismissing Parker?
We're not. We went over this on the last show. I like Parker a lot, but right now he's wide receiver number 25. He's actually going a spot after McLaurin, updated drafts. I think that he has a very good chance to have a top 20 season, but I think his upside is probably if Preston Williams.
He was just wide receiver 7.
Yeah, when the guy who was getting all the targets got hurt halfway through the year. There's the chance that Preston Williams comes back and just soaks a lot of his overall target share. The thing about McLaurin is that there's no, we just went over, there's no one else there. So that overall upside is so big.
I can see him having a very similar season to A.J. Brown. I mean, why not? Because A.J. Brown just had 1,000 yards on 50 grabs. I mean, you don't think McLaurin can do that? I mean, he missed the last 2 games of the season and almost had 1,000 yards himself. So, and the fact is, you're going to have to take Brown in the second, third round. I still think that there's a scenario in your draft, you probably don't feel great about him being your wide receiver 1. But there's a scenario in draft where you can go back, tight end back, wide receiver, and maybe he's there in the 5th or end of the 4th, depending on where you are.
Yeah,
and he is your second wide receiver.
Let's get to the next guy. The spot actually above him, wide receiver number 23, pick number 57 as well. There's a chance with the way that the draft breaks down, DJ Chark could also be there. That if you somehow were able to, in the 4th and 5th, be able to collect Chark and McLaurin, I feel like one of these guys is a fringe top 10 guy with the ability to bust in due to the lack of competition. I don't know which one's it going to be. Could it be both? Yes. Could it be neither? Sure. These are the ranges of outcomes that we deal with. But I feel like Chark is set up very similarly to Terry McLaurin here, Jake.
I definitely could see that case. And I honestly think that if you look at it objectively, you could argue that Chark has more competition, although he is definitively their number 1. I think that if you talk about prospect versus prospect, that's where you start to get into it too, is that Chark has the number 1 NFL type McLaurin. If you're being honest about his skill set, looks like somebody that, I'm not saying he can't. There's been wide receivers like Steve Smith's a good comparison. Steve Smith, you wouldn't say is a prototypical NFL number 1 wide receiver. So, there can be situations where that's just the fit of the offense. But Terry McLaurin, prototypically wise, isn't the guy that you go to as your number 1. He's usually often more like a 1B to a 1A, where Chark has that. So, if you're giving me the 2 and you're giving the way that Minshew looked at times as well, I'm still going to lean Chark. It's super close, and I'm not saying that McLaurin can't outscore him. And what did we talk about in the last show? The difference between wide receiver 15 and wide receiver 30 could be 1 touchdown. So I'm not going to get into it. If you want McLaurin over Chark, that's fine. I have Chark over McLaurin, but it's super close.
Yeah, and they're going to be in that breakdown that I talked about. Do you if you're going to wait on receiver to the 4th, 5th, 6th round, let's say the 4th round, in the scenario that I just mentioned, grabbing I think that I would want my wide receiver strategy to be 2 of this type of guy. Someone who could really break through. They could be an absolute bust because they play on bad teams with questionable quarterbacks. But who is the competition for Chark? The next closest Jacksonville wide receiver being drafted, D.D. Westbrook, wide receiver number 73, pick number 215.
It's a cluster after there with Conley and D.D. and
it's definitely
Shenault.
A cluster as well there too. I mean, Shenault might actually end up being the best one, but I that's what I was saying. If you took D.D. Conley and Shenault versus Shenault versus Antonio Gandy Golden as pure rookie versus rookie, Chenault's better. And then if you say Dede and Conley versus Harmon and Sims, you would still take the Jaguars. And that's what I was saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah, it's definitely a mess after Chark. I would just say that comparison wise, team versus team, I would take the Jaguars crew.
I lean Terry too, but I think that they're very
super close.
I think that they're very these two just in particular are just they're in a bucket to themselves. Yes, Paul.
I just wanted to jump in before you guys move on. You messed up Terry's nickname.
What?
It's High T.
Oh yeah, High T. He does have a lot of tea. Score McLaurin. You got Chark at Darkness here. We got some good nicknames. We got some high upside. We're good to go. TY. number 26 on the list. Pick number 65, high is 47, low is 79.
Big range here, yeah.
I'm out. We have him in legal leagues, by the way.
I know.
I like it. I like it a lot. Like I don't see like Michael Pittman is being drafted number 56. You have the Frenchman Paris Campbell. I think what the Legend of Superman Dean Cain got. Is he cut yet, Jake?
Yeah,
He was on the Steelers.
Yeah, he was on the Steelers, but he didn't play, of course. Yeah, the thing with Ty is like there's some guys here that we know their upside. They've done it before. Ty, Keenan Allen. I've done a few mocks and drafts already where if they're going to fall to the 5th, 6th, 7th round, I mean that's absolutely golden. It's great, but that's where they have to fall for me.
But that's where he is falling right now.
I think even a little further. Like Tyler Boyd, I'd rather have. Jarvis Landry, I'd rather have. There's some guys here that Marvin Jones, honestly, like there's some guys here that I would rather have than just drafting the name value of Ty. I mean, Ty, he's just. I think we're going to be frustrated as a guy. We own Ty. We're going to be frustrated again, like we were last year and the years before.
Potentially, like if he can stay healthy, that's always a big ask for one thing. But I think that like Chark and like McLaurin, we can talk about. The Colts love Pittman so much. Like Campbell's really going to break out. Like. It's just him for the moment until one of these other guys actually does something.
Yeah.
Yeah, be honest about Hilton when healthy. I mean, if we want to do this with a lot of players, we can. But if healthy, that's all I'm concerned. I'm not concerned about anything else with Hilton because he's getting Phillip Rivers, who, Phillip Rivers didn't look great at times himself last year, but he's an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. And I know there's articles out there saying, like, is it a significant It's not. It's still an upgrade.
Yeah, it's an upgrade.
No, it's 20% upgrade?
Yeah, if 20% upgrade or so, sure.
25. I mean, it's still a factor, and it's still a factor in potentially like the deep ball. I mean, look at what Keenan Allen just finished with Phillip Rivers and Mike Williams, and Hunter Henry was still a top 10 tight end. Phillip Rivers in a down season, Austin Eckler was a top 5 running back. Like, as bad as it was, he still made that offense really good, better than anything that Jacoby Brissett did with the Colts. He's got a great offensive line, that being Rivers taking over for Brissett. I think that T.Y. Hilton just needs to stay on the field, and I think that's the frustrating part of him is that he's been banged up so much recently, but he's going to be your number 2, if not your number 3. And the good part about it, and why I'm with you, Pat, and saying that I'm in on him this year, is because years past, he had to be your number 1. And similar to Maury Cooper, you had those down weeks and you had those frustrating disappearances of only 3 points or 4 points or 5 points. Well, that's fine now because now he's your wide receiver 2 or 3, 2 at best. And now he's in the perfect spot. It's funny that you said he's 26 because that's actually where I have him. I actually have him wide receiver 26 between DK Metcalf and AJ Green.
Yeah. To kind of add on, Phillip Rivers 8th in overall air yards last year, 8.4 his highest rate since 2012. Now, there is an argument to be made that this defense with the Colts is going to be a little bit better. They drafted another running back. We talk about the offensive line. The big downfall to Rivers is that he continuously makes mistakes and throws you out of games, that maybe they take a more conservative approach to all this.
They play at a slow pace.
They play at a slow pace, run the ball, that maybe there won't be the overall opportunity. My thing with Hilton would be that, yes, the quarterback is an upgrade in terms of getting him the ball. That's always good news. Yeah. The other thing would be that maybe these other guys just aren't any good, and he's the only guy, and he ends up with like 120 targets. Like, that's the hope.
Face it.
It's possible.
Face it, Happy. You're not any good.
Well, you kept talking about Hollywood Brown, Jake. He's number 28 here on the list. Pick number 70 overall. High as 52, low as 86 over the past 2 weeks. I feel like he's sort of like the minor league version of what, like, as frustrating as T.Y. is going to be, he's going to be even more frustrating.
For sure he is. Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it, but I actually kind of like this range where he's going. Like, if you're really shooting for upside on a wide receiver, I mean, you talk about best ball. Everyone always talks about best ball and Brown, but if you're just playing normal fantasy and you are shooting for upside, say you do avoid wide receivers in the first 3 rounds and you take 2 backs, you take a tight end, you get a solid, maybe it's Chark, McLaurin.
I don't like it. Too
and
high.
You're looking for
why,
that
Why
upside?
is he better than either one of the Texans guys?
What Texans guys? Like,
Cooks and
Fuller? And
like, isn't he just Will Fuller? Except, I mean, he's not even as healthy.
Sure.
He's just as healthy as Will Fuller.
Yeah, he is. And in this range, I mean, if you want to
He's
shoot
better
for
than Will
one of
Fuller.
those guys, I mean, yeah, absolutely. But let's keep in mind that Brown really, I think he played at like, what, Jake, 50, 60% last year? I mean, this guy wasn't even on the field for half the snaps in the first half of the season. He dealt with an injury. I think there's like tremendous upside with him. But you're right, there is with Fuller. With Cooks, Cooks, we've just seen like over the past couple of years, like one shot, his career could be over. Yeah,
Sure.
you want to take that upside? All right. I would just take the younger, fresher guy and what will probably be the best.
Sure, but
offense.
you get Cooks like 30 picks later.
I mean, you may even get him like
And that's
50
certainly
picks
fair.
later.
I'll give you two comparisons here for everybody out there that's on the me Cole hard man train for you do it better than I do, but about how his touchdowns per catch and all that. What is it? Marquise Brown 7 on 40 something catches last year. Like the guy can score, and he's probably going to have a better. I would bet money he's going to have a better yards per catch because he's going to see more plays, more big opportunities, because as we just talked about, he wasn't 100% last year as a rookie, started slow because of the foot and all the talk in the offseason. And the second comparison I'll make is I don't think that's fair to say is Will Fuller. I think he's Deshaun Jackson in his prime. Deshaun Jackson, as much as we rag on him, including myself, I'm one of the biggest people, at his prime, he was even more consistent than Amari Cooper. For as much as we hate Amari Cooper, Deshaun Jackson was more like 6 great games, 6 in the middle, and then maybe 4 to 6 in that range, like what it might be, depending on what the numbers shake out to, but 4 in that case, like down weeks. But more often than not, he was at least a wide receiver 3 with a lot of wide receiver 1 weeks. And I think that's who Hollywood Brown is. He's Deshaun Jackson, and Lamar Jackson can get him the ball enough in a full season of fully being healthy. As much as I even like Miles Boykin, this is another guy who's his main competition. Mark Andrews, a tight end. And this is very similar to Deebo Samuel with the 49ers last year.
It is, and it's a very similar offense, too, where that offense is designed to run the ball as much as possible. But that does create ample opportunity off play action for Hollywood to get behind the defense. I don't know. I get that the upside would be Deshaun Jackson, but in terms of actual getting the ball downfield and just volume of throwing and just how the offense is constituted, McNabb's better than Lamar Jackson at doing that. Like, I kind of see him as Santana Moss with the quarterback, the way that people need to get him the ball.
That's a fair one.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a fair, and to be like honest, I only have him for 65 receptions.
Yeah.
So I mean, but if you're looking last year, I was pulling up the number while we were talking. Yeah, 46 receptions last year on 7 touchdowns on those 46. Even if he only gets 7 again this year, but he's got that 65 receptions. I mean, he could get close to 1,000 yards, if not eclipse it, for the fact of what AJ Brown, different styles, but can put up those kind of yards per catch.
You drafting Boykin at all?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a big Boykin fan. You should know that from last year.
Yeah, I remember. Then I remembered last year, and I was like, do we really want this guy?
No, it's my first, like, for everybody that wants to call me a homer with things, the first Notre Dame receiver I liked in a long time. I mean, you go back to Michael Floyd. I haven't liked the Notre Dame wide receiver in forever. But, look, Miles Boykin, I would love it better if he was on a different team. But the good thing here is, and I hate, Chris knows I hate this crutch argument. I would like Miles Boykin in a best ball league because he's going to be very touchdown. Yeah.
Okay,
he's going to be touchdown.
Okay, straight up, let me ask you this. 12-team league, 16 rounds. Are you drafting Miles Boykin? I'm not.
He won't get drafted.
He won't get drafted. Depending on what's on the board, I might take him with one of the final picks. But the thing is, he's going to be touchdown dependent. And that's what I was getting to. He's going to be somebody that could finish the season with 40 receptions, 700 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Like that legitimately could happen. He's going to be very kind of like tight end like.
Well, then if he gets his tight end eligibility, I'm in. If not, I'm out.
No, not in that fashion.
Deebo. Let's get to him and Aiyuk right now then. I think those are probably the 2 mainstays that we want to hit on from the 49ers. Deebo broke his foot, out 10 weeks. Does that put him track for week 1, though? Like, if everything goes as planned?
No, the Inside Injuries came out and said, like, best case scenario is week 1. But you don't want to do that because anybody who's come back that fast has had, like Trent Taylor just last year, has a reoccurrence. They listed all the wide receivers that have had this happen. The ideal scenario is middle of September, if not the end of the month. But if I actually think that's very bad for us for fantasy if he does try to come back for week 1, because it'd be very unlikely he makes it through the season without re-injuring himself.
If he sits that first month, Kittle and cash games on DraftKings every week, by the way.
Every week.
So here's what's happened over the last week. Since the injury, he's been pushed down to wide receiver number 40. He's number 29 in the month of June, but a lot of that happened before he ended up being drafted. He was going as high as number 46 overall. He's being drafted as late as number 156 right now. When is a reasonable time to take him? Like if you're willing to inherit the risk, like people drafted AJ Green in the 8th round last year. Didn't work out. But like, when do you feel okay burning a pick knowing that he could be fucked?
That same spot.
Yeah.
8th round?
I think, yeah, 8th round.
He's getting overdrafted, in my opinion. I thought he was.
Well, that's what we talked. But the part that got cut out of the last show and we talked about it was that it's too high.
Yeah, it's too high. But now it's like, yeah, if you want to take the shot in the 8th, 9th round, sure. I mean, at that point of your draft, you're probably going to have 3 wide receivers that you like anyways. And if he does start on PUP or he misses the first couple weeks of the season, so be it. If you're really comfortable with your draft skills, and you're going to be fine. But I'd rather this spot again. He was just going too high for a guy that I think had. He obviously has some upside. He's got some good hands and runs nice routes, but, Sanders was there at times, and, Kittle, I think, missed a couple games. He had a big blow-up game then. They draft Aiyuk. They want to run the football. They have all these backs. So I like this range, 8th, 9th range.
Yeah, so what do you do with Aiyuk then? Does it,
Trent Taylor.
Are we doing Trent Taylor again?
No, but he's a guy that I
mentioned the
guarantee
one.
you're going to talk about on DraftKings if there's no Deebo in the first few weeks.
No,
So we have,
you're
we,
wrong one.
We got Dante Pettis still in town.
No, Jalen Hurd. That's who you want to talk about.
Jalen Hurd.
Jalen Hurd, yes, a converted running back for going to wide receiver, still learning his routes, and he doesn't need to be a precise. He doesn't need to be Deebo Samuel. But the good thing about Deebo Samuel is he's dangerous after the catch. The reason he's converting to wide receiver, or did moving from college to the NFL, he's 6'5", 230. He was a running back. He's like the most ginormous running back of all time, up there with like Derrick Henry. That's why he moves to wide receiver. But he's got that mindset with the ball in his hands. Missed the entire season last year because of a stretch fracture in his back. I think he could be the one that people aren't talking about. Look, I'm not saying he's going to step right past Trent Taylor. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Brandon Aiyuk. He just at least needs to be in the conversation of like, hey, if you're in a deep league and, you're going 18, 20 rounds or any type of dynasty, best balls, it's like throw a flyer on him because he could be in the mix. But to answer both your questions, Deebo fell to me in the 40 range with like the Justin Jeffersons, Deontay Johnsons, Mike Williams of the world. But what we need to remember is a few years ago when we talked about Le'Veon Bell, he's in that range, but he's in that range with like 12 games. That's where I projected him to miss 4. So that's 12 games of that production, which actually puts him back up near the top 30 because you're getting that over 12 versus 16. So that's where he's the risk of taking that. Aiyuk, I think, is going to start getting overdrafted. I would have taken him in that same range initially, and I was, because I still think he is the most talented wide receiver, but he's still a rookie. And what did you say at the top of this, Pat? This is a run-first offense that goes through Kittle first. I just think that Aiyuk's going to become too price prohibitive for still being a rookie, and he might not even be the best option.
Yeah, and when Samuel comes back, he's third at best on the depth chart.
Exactly.
In terms of getting his target share. So
maybe one of those guys that you just sell high immediately. If he
yeah,
has
but
a good game
I feel
early.
like that opportunity, like,
It's a small window.
but even I don't think that people fall for that anymore.
Yeah.
It's not 2011 anymore.
What's amazing is that Chark, I was going to say this earlier, is that it took me a little bit to buy in because Chark was one of those guys. I mean, the first couple weeks of the season, he blew up, and he was one of the most traded wide receivers in all of fantasy.
Yeah, and
last
anyone
year.
who traded for him was like, this is great.
Yeah, and anyone who got him, I mean, I declined. I'll be honest. Like, I don't want him. I'm not totally buying him. And then you see the skill set of him actually being a true one. But
So
yeah, Aiyuk is, I agree with Jake, though. Aiyuk is going to be overdrafted now. And all you
pass.
want in this offense is Kittle.
Kittle, I mean,
Maybe no
Samuel at a
start.
discount. Maybe if Colonel Mostart starts falling.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't want to draft him like he's the starter, knowing that for, like,
He's only
50% of the games, he's going to get, like,
Yeah.
4 touches.
12 touches probably on average.
AJ Green is up next. He is being drafted as wide receiver number 30. His compadre, Tyler Boyd, being drafted as wide receiver number 32. Green going as high as 59, Boyd going as high as 54. So people seem to believe that there's more upside with Boyd, but the floor for AJ Green is higher. Pick number 98 at the bottom, pick number 101 for Tyler Boyd, both going in the 70s, 72, and 75. Joe Burrow enjoys completing passes to the slot. That's where we're going to see a whole lot of Tyler Boyd this year, you hope. But AJ Green's still AJ Green. Yes, he's coming off a miserable year, but he should be healthy at this point. Like, I don't want to get sucked into the name value and think I'm drafting AJ Green from like 5 years ago.
Right.
But what can he provide at this point, Jake, for you? Like, what's his upside, actual upside?
His actual upside is still what his talent is, and his top 10 wide receiver. I mean, let's be honest about who AJ Green is. We have to see this first. It's one of those ones where I feel like August is going to come, depending on if we have 2 or 3 preseason games. Maybe we get some reports from training camp, but I feel like his value is going to move in drafts when people start seeing him on the field, either good or positive or negative. Like, he's going to move because people are going to see him and be like, oh my God, he looks like the AJ Green we've always known. Or it's going to be like, he doesn't look like he has the same burst step, whatever it might be, as he used to. I mean, we saw toward the end of Des Bryant. Des Bryant was never a great separator, but even as he got slower and slower, it became worse and worse. So it's going to be something to monitor and watch. If he's what he ever used to be, even 95%, he only lost a little bit. He has top 10 upside, especially with Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow comes in and wins Rookie of the Year and sets rookie records for passing touchdowns and passing yards and breaks Baker's Mayfield's touchdown record, all that type of stuff. I mean, Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, and hell, even somebody of John Ross or a tight end, somebody else might even have value on this team because of what Burrow can do. Like, again, he's a rookie, so you just never know. But like, I think Boyd is a great pick because at worst case, he's the number 2 with Burrow leading this team. At best case, he turns back into the number 1 again.
And he's had back-to-back seasons with 1,000 yards, with AJ on the field, without AJ on the field,
With my main
poor quarterback play.
You forgot about the real best receiver on this team. My main man, contested catch specialist, Auden Tate.
Oh, yeah.
You throw that guy a ball in traffic, he's just, yeah!
His catch radius is actually off the charts, yeah.
Can't make the easy ones, though.
No,
he suffers from Brandon Lloyd syndrome.
But go to your point, I'm glad you said that, Chris, because you said with him on and off the field, that being AJ Green. Because if you recall, both you guys and everybody out there listening, at the beginning of last year, what was all the talk about Tyler Boyd?
Yeah.
He's better when AJ Green was on the field.
And he proved that he can.
That's out the window.
Yeah.
That's done.
For sure.
So we like both these guys.
For sure, absolutely. And I think AJ, I mean, we can say this all we want. We can laugh about it, this narrative. I mean, we talk about guys being motivated. This guy could have played last year. He's been on record saying numerous times he wants.
It was in the best interest of the Bengals not to just get yourself healthy for next year, pal.
And the fact that they
that
switched
worked out
over at the
perfectly.
quarterback play too, right? I mean, they got rid of Dalton for a reason.
Who
They
was
went
the,
all in.
Who was the jabroni they were playing last year? Lindley? No, was it Lindley?
Finley?
Ryan Finley.
Ryan Finley.
He was pathetic. He was awful. So I don't even blame AJ for not wanting to get on the field. It would have hurt his chances at getting that big contract that he wants. Now he's got Burrow. It would be nice in the world that we're living in. We're not going to be able to see these guys because Burrow has also been on record that he wants to be able to chuck footballs with Boyd and T. Higgins and build a rapport with AJ Green. It's just we're not going to be able to see that, which for whatever it is, I mean, maybe it's nothing because you talked about Burrow. He just had one of the best seasons of all time for a college quarterback. But I love the fact that in your average draft, people will bypass AJ. And if I'm deciding between AJ and TY, as the two guys that will probably fall down most boards, it's AJ.
So, Jake, what do we do with someone like T. Higgins? Like, they spent an awful lot of draft capital on him. Like, trying to think about this in my mind going forward. You get Burrow, you bring back Green. They franchised him, right?
Yeah.
So
He's got John
you have
Ross.
you have what's that?
Still got John Ross there for one more year.
Let's just throw John
Yeah,
Ross onto the
I
pile
agree.
here. So you have T. Higgins. Was T. Higgins drafted to replace AJ Green next year? I guess is my question.
I would say, yeah, more next year than this year. And I actually wrote up during the draft time, like the T. Higgins has one of the bigger ranges of outcomes where I could see him being a bust in 2 years, or I could see him turning into the number 1 option on this team. And that's not like a cop out or anything, because I'll make bold claims about plenty of players. It's just that T. Higgins has that, like, he's that kind of player where he's still got a lot of things that he needs to work on in his game. There was a lot of opportunities coming from that offense to the Clemson, and there's a lot of opportunities given his style that he was able to take care of it or on the field in like advantage matchups wise. Like he was able, like Marquise Lee. Chris, I referenced Marquise Lee so many times because Marquise Lee was somebody who was able to use his athleticism just to beat everybody in the college game and didn't care about running routes. And then at the first couple of years of his NFL career, that showed, and he was faltering. And then he finally started to run more precise routes and started to get better. T. Higgins is going to have to find like a similar path to that, and hopefully quicker than later. But yes, that's part of the reason why I say this is like for next year. I don't think we should expect a lot from T. Higgins, even if AJ Green's 50% of what he used to be. I don't think that it'll be a huge impact fantasy wise this year, at least not somebody you could count on week to week.
I think Higgins is an absolute fade. You don't even touch him.
Yeah, well, I mean, this year it's that. Is he even being drafted?
He wasn't even the number 1 in Clemson, was he, Jake?
Oh, T. Higgins? No, that's what I'm saying. That's part of the reason is like the Clemson offense. Like you could argue at times he was the number 1, but with like Ross and all the rest of them, and that offense is so ridiculous. They had 4 wide receivers that we were talking about last year that could all be first rounders. Like he just never was asked to be like the number 1 in the fact, like he's the go-to. I need you on this play. I need you to do this on this play. I need you to take this cover. Like that's why it's just they were able to mix and match and move people around and just take advantage of the matchups.
Gallup, Michelle Gallup, is number 31, as high as 62, low as 94. CeeDee Lamb is going as wide receiver number 40, as high as 100 as high as 51, as low as 140 with an average pick of 100. Average for Gallup is 75.
51 CD Lamb, eh? Wow.
Yeah, or 40. Yeah, high is 51.
Yeah.
People seem to be very torn on. People want Dallas number 2 receiver.
Yeah.
They don't know which one they want. I think I would still lean Gallup at this point. Gallup last year, you talk about Hollywood Brown and the impact that he can make in such, he doesn't need so much volume to have a huge fantasy impact. I kind of feel the same way about Gallup. Over 1,100 yards on 66 catches last year. That's kind of nuts. Only 6 touchdowns. And when you dig a little bit deeper, you see Michael Gallup averaged almost 17 yards per catch. That was ranked 7th in the league last year and had 5 top 15 finishes at wide receiver. The downside is he also had 6. He also scored 6 TDs in his 8. Now I'm all screwed up here. He also had 6 finishes as wide receiver 35 or worse. Yeah. So you're going to get it or you're not.
Yeah, and he had some drops. The thing that I've noticed with Gallup is, I don't know about you, Jake, but I don't even think he's going in this range. I think people are they're bypassing him. They see the sexy pick in CD Lamb. They see Amari Cooper. You got Zeke there. A lot of people are hyping up Blake Jarwin. I think Gallup is becoming one of the better steals. And in dynasty leagues, this guy fell outside the top 55 wide receivers. I mean, he may be on a new team in a couple of years, and that could be the 2 more years left, and they move on from him. But he's still going to be a big part of this offense, and I think he's safer than CeeDee Lamb. I don't know how you feel, Jake, but I'm more than willing to have Gallup over CeeDee Lamb, even though I have a big man crush for CeeDee Lamb. Skill set.
The skill set, the talent is most likely higher, but if we're thinking about who can actually make a fantasy impact,
who's been there, who knows Dak?
Neither one of these two is going to be the one. We know that.
Right.
At least most of the time. There are going to be games when Amari gets taken out, but they still throw him the ball. He just doesn't catch anything. Yeah. So then you're dealing with these two. If the big downfield plays are still going to rest with Gallup over Lamb, if we're just going to talk about 2 guys who don't get a ton of volume, I think I'd want the big play guy.
Well, and the biggest problem here is, so I do have Gallup a few spots. I have Gallup at 29 and CeeDee Lamb at 37. It's a small gap as wide receiver has been this entire time, but at the midpoint of the season, when Gallup really started to turn that corner, he only had 1 game under 7-something points. And, the 2 games where he scored 7, it was 7-3 and 7-8, somewhere around there. All the rest of them were double digits in 2 20-point games. So, Gallup was more consistent, even with that one really terrible week. He was more consistent than Amari Cooper in the second half of the season. So he's that going for him. Where I kind of groaned with what you're saying is, I don't know that one of these doesn't become the number 1 and overtakes Amari Cooper. The problem is with Dallas is that Chris brought up Clemson before this. I think it's going to be very much like Clemson, is we're not going to know. We're going to do our best every single week to look at matchups. But the biggest thing we don't know as of today is kind of back when Kirk Cousins came to the Vikings is where Diggs and Thielen were going to line up. We don't know that a Cooper is going to stay running as many slot routes as he is. What if those go to CeeDee Lamb, because that's where CeeDee Lamb does a lot of damage? What if it doesn't and they push CeeDee Lamb outside all the time and then Cooper's fine, but Lamb isn't, so Gallup is definitively the number 2? Or what if Blake Jarwin steps up and one of the 3 wide receivers is always left out? So I think it's going to be a lot of uncertainty. We're going to try and play the matchups, but as a team, this is going to go back to my catchphrase, Chris. Buy the cake, not the icing. I want Dak Prescott and Zeke, I'm kind of staying away from all wide receivers where they're currently going. The only one similar to what Chris said is Gallup is starting to fall, where I'll take some flyers on him, but I kind of just want to avoid the wide receivers right now.
Deontay Johnson is wide receiver number 33.
He's getting a lot of hype, man.
I get it theoretically, but you kidding me with this?
A month ago, he was a 9th, 10th round pick. Now, honestly, I've seen him go in the 7th.
He is going as high as pick 59, as low as 106. This just feels like where you have to draft him right now. You better be right.
You better be right, and you better hope that Big Ben plays the full season.
Yeah, why not just draft Ben at this point? Draft Ben in the last round and reap all the rewards of Juju and Deontay and Ebron and whoever.
When you look into the numbers, it's he led all that rookie class last year, all catches. That kind of sneaks up on you. You have to double take. I know I did. I had to triple take the fact that he actually led all rookie wide receivers in grabs. I mean, he was pretty good down the stretch. But as I said before, numerous times, I'm not buying into Ben being fully healthy. And honestly, that may seem crazy to say that I'm not going to draft Deontay Johnson. Sure, maybe he'll be better. Maybe I was head on straight. But he is an old man who hasn't thrown a passing touchdown. It'll be over 2 years now. I don't even know if he threw one week 1 against New England last year. So in the 7th round, it's too much. There's no chance. Like Jarvis Landry is going after him. What the hell is that about? Landry's been so consistent for years.
Oh, after I thought you meant like personally, like he's going after him.
He's going after him.
He's going after him.
It's like, what did Jarvis Landry ever do to Deontay Johnson?
Right?
Like,
you guys would rather have Jarvis Landry?
I would rather have Jarvis Landry.
Even with all those
and
guys
I don't like Jarvis Landry, but like we're now in a range.
Oh,
where,
absolutely.
You know, at wide because they're going back to back, so we can even just bring Landry into a part of this conversation. Deontay Johnson, receiver number 33, Jarvis Landry, receiver number 34, going both at pick 77. That's our ADP. Just like when you see it, it makes a lot of sense. Like Deontay Johnson, his highest draft spot, 59. Landry's is 60, but it's 106 at the bottom for Johnson, only 95 for Landry. Like people feel like there's a floor with Jarvis Landry. They're not wrong.
Well, it's what you just said about the Cowboys. Everybody's trying to get the number 2 Steelers wide receiver, and that's who they think it's going to be is Deontay Johnson. I say think is like I have Deontay Johnson higher than James Washington, but James Washington on 15 fewer receptions had 55 more yards. James Washington's not dead yet. And I say that like, yes, as of today, I'm taking Deontay Johnson. I have him ahead of James Washington, but this isn't necessarily going to be Deontay Johnson is the clear, definitive, no competition from anybody else on this roster, number 2 wide receiver. It could be James Washington still in the mix. And there's still a scenario where James Washington might be on the field a little bit more if they want, depending on where they want to put Juju Smith-Schuster and Deontay Johnson for formation wise. James Washington is the outside big play guy. So again, and this is from somebody that admittedly likes James Washington, but I would still take Deontay. I just don't think it's clear as these rankings say they are, as you're talking about, or I should say ADP. And you'd bring up Landry. I have Landry at 31, and maybe, again, that's going to change if he's not ready for week 1. But Deontay Johnson's at 46. It should not be as close as you're talking about it. And, just 15 spots seems a lot more reasonable than what, 1? You said they're back-to-back?
Yeah. Jarvis Landry caught 55.6% of his downfield targets last year from Baker Mayfield. OBJ, 40%. There's a legitimate chemistry that Baker has with Landry. He's like the only guy who seems to get along with Baker on the field, at least. That I don't see why that's going away. I know they add Hooper. I know Kareem Hunt's going to play a larger role. Maybe there just are too many pieces.
It's possible.
But that's not what you're drafting him for here. Like, we don't know if Deontay Johnson's actually going to be good or not, or even better than James Washington. I have scanned down the list. I have it to 73 in terms of ADP at receiver. James Washington is not going inside the top 73 at receiver. So you can have Washington in round 16, or Deontay Johnson. Like, it's probably going to be like round 5 by the time it comes around.
Exactly. And I agree with Jake 100%. Totally on par with the fact that I don't think James Washington is dead in this offense. I still think that there's some upside. I know Ben talked him up last year before he got hurt. It's very possible that Washington outscores Deontay Johnson. I would not be shocked with that.
Let's finish off with these two guys. Number 35 in ADP. Number 37 in ADP. We briefly hit on their names a little bit earlier. Will Fuller is number 35, ADP of 83. Brandon Cooks is number 37 with an ADP of 89. I did hear Deshaun Watson is their quarterback. And I also heard there's like 150 targets to go around that just left town.
That's a good point.
Can these guys stay healthy? No guarantee. Randall Cobb also in this mix as well.
Yeah.
That maybe Cobb is the better draft pick, but like I would have a hard time saying don't gamble on Will Fuller at 35 or don't gamble on Brandon Cooks at 37. Like, these are your wide receiver 4s. Like, that's what they are. And we know they have we know that they have higher upside than that week to week. It's just, do you know the week? I don't know. If they're healthy, play them.
Well, that's why I would go with Cobb. And if you want to fire 2 bullets, fire 2. Go with Cooks and Cobb. The Cobb has been a wide receiver 1, top 10 before with Jordy Nelson on the Packers, on an offense that you could look back and argue might be similar to this, is that you're going to have, whether it's Will Fuller or Cooks, is going to be that number 1 outside big play guy, and Cobb can just do what Cobb does best as the number 2 out. Like, I feel like, and I could be wrong, but as of today, I feel like it's going to be Cooks or Fuller and Randall Cobb. Like, Randall Cobb's role, for me, my opinion on this offense, and this is the reason we like Kiki QT for a while there, is that slot role with Deshaun Watson, the comfortableness over the middle of the field. Like, Cobb's set, and I feel like they brought in Cobb for that reason, is like they know they're set with him. He's the guy. So whoever figures out who to stay healthy and whoever ends up being the number 1, Cobb's in there for 100+ targets of his own. So I'm taking a ton of gambles, if you want to call them gambles, on Cobb later. Cobb could easily lead this team in receptions. Cobb could end up being the best wide receiver on this
1,000
team.
yards last year.
It's funny. Like, if we had to bet on who was like, if we had to cap, let's say,
Yeah.
who is going to lead this team in receptions, where's David Johnson in that mix?
Yeah, he may lead the team in catches. And again, it's health. He fits into everybody that
week
we're talking
5,
about here
yeah.
besides Cobb. Like, he fits in perfectly in the same mold with Fuller and Brendan Cooks, where they could play 14 games and, be unbelievable this year, but all 3 of them. But there's also the scenario where they just do anything. But
I think between the two, you
50
flip
catches,
a coin.
50
Like,
catches for DJ if he plays 14 games, Jake?
okay, well, are people drafting Daniel Fells at all?
No,
I'm not.
Darren Fells.
Darren Fells, sure.
Oh.
Is Daniel Fells the guy that used to be on the Lions?
Maybe.
I don't think so. I don't think it was Daniel Fells. Was there a Daniel Fells? I don't think so.
Now
That's
I'm
what he
all
just
confused. Anyway, Fells, Texans Fells. He was good.
He was
last year. He's still
It
there.
was good, but it was touchdown reliant, and he's
A lot
like
of play in the red
47
zone.
years old. Yeah, and they had like Jordan Akins and
They had
Who's the other
Steven
one?
Anderson for the longest time, but he's out the door, I believe. I think he's on the Patriots.
oh yeah,
He got
the
a lot. They had
wearing
like 7
kid.
tight ends
So
at one point. All of them were hurt.
they do. They still have like 7 again this year.
They
They're
don't have
doing
as-
like the Chicago Bears.
Yeah,
fan.
they don't have as many as the Bears. So yeah, maybe Cobb's the best value. But if you had to pick between Fuller and Cooks, who would you pick?
I would pick Fuller. I'm probably alone
Cooks.
there, but I honestly, man, Cooks, and I know it's just
I would take
it's one
Cooks.
shot, man. It's one shot.
Give him
and
the
he
Roddy
is
from Jersey Shore,
done.
one shot, bro.
No,
I mean, he was just completely phased out of the offense. I mean, there were some reports out of LA last year that he just could not even focus, man. He couldn't even stay on the field at times. So I fear for him. I don't know. I think he definitely has the higher ceiling out of between Fuller and Cobb for sure. But
I think at this point, I would rather just gamble on that.
and I just gamble on the fact that Fuller, every time he's on the field, he at least does something. It's true. He does. When he's on the field, he scores touchdowns.
This is true. Although,
The Cook sometimes just puts up zeros. I mean, he did it last year. He put up zeros. I don't know. Jake, I know you like Cooks. I know you just really don't like Fuller.
no, because I'm looking last year and a couple times where I was double checking to make sure. Yeah, there's plenty of times that he didn't score touchdowns, like every game except for one.
Well, there's one game he had 3, maybe. And
yeah,
another one
one
he had
week
0,
That was
another one
it.
had
He won
3.
someone $1 million
That was-
bucks. Everyone just
That was
remembers
all
that.
3 touchdowns. That was I brought that up a lot. That was 50% of his fantasy production for the season.
Oh, yeah, he only had 3. That was all one game. But if you go look at the last, I guess, 3 years, I don't have the numbers handy, but I remember looking before, like, last season, like, wow, he's only played 8 games with Deshaun Watson, and he's, like, borderline
Well,
wide
it's the
receiver one
runs. He started
got the
2017
runs?
with yeah, he's got the runs. He started 2017 with 2, 1, and 2 touchdowns, and he scored 15 or more points in every single. And then he went zeros the rest of the season. Never had over 44 yards. And then 2018, he had 4 touchdowns. The other 3 games, he didn't top 68 yards, 0 touchdown. It's that he's DFS guy. Like, I will never own him in seasonal.
Pass on all these guys.
All right, I think that will conclude part 3 of the wide receiver player profiles. If you want to check out parts 1 and 2, hit the description. You want to check out all the running back player profiles? Hit the description. A lot of stuff in that description. I suggest you read it, along with the time codes. Probably not doing you any good now, but if you want to go back and hear about the players, boom, just give a quick click. Get it on demand. Smash the like for the episode. Leave your sleeper in the comment section and rate and review and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you download your podcast, the Google box. I believe it is up there as well. And we will be back with part 4 sometime in the future. So check that out. I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!